Alrighty, I'm super excited because I came up with a few new ideas for edible cookie dough. And the first one I'm going to make is red velvet edible cookie dough. So what I have is a 1/4 cup of softened butter. I've also got 3/4 cup of sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 cup of buttermilk, but this, I don't usually buy buttermilk because it's expensive, but you can make your own. And for every cup you use, you want to mix it with a tablespoon of either lemon juice or vinegar. So this is 3/4 cups of milk with 3/4 tablespoon of lemon juice. And then to substitute for the egg, I've got a tablespoon and a half of sour cream. I'm also going to be using a teaspoon of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder, and I'm going to be using some red food coloring to make it red velvet. I've got some white chocolate chips, and I've also got a 1.5 cups of cooked flour. What I did was I microwaved this for 1 minute and 15 seconds, and I stirred it about every 15 seconds. That way it cooks out all the bacteria so the flour is edible. So, alright, let's get started. So I've got the butter in here, and then I'm going to cream it with the sugar. Should have brought the trash can over, but oh well. Get that out of the way. And recipes that call for, I know different cookie recipes call for either melted butter or softened butter. If it calls for like room temperature butter, I still stick it in the microwave a little bit after I've let it sit out, just to kind of help it cream into the sugar a little bit easier. And it doesn't change the density of the cookie too much. Because apparently you want to use melted butter for cookies that are going to be more chewy, and softened butter for cookies that are going to be a little bit more dense, like maybe a sugar cookie. But if you microwave it and just soften it up a little bit in the microwave, it won't melt, and it's a lot easier to cream together. Just gotta work it a little bit. Alright, that's pretty much good. Then I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and my 1.5 tablespoons of sour cream. Okay. I'm also going to go ahead and add the buttermilk. And as well. And red velvet cupcakes, what they are is pretty much a mix between a chocolate, or I'm sorry, red velvet cookies or cupcakes or whatever. Pretty much a mix between a chocolate and a vanilla flavor. It's just kind of got a kiss of chocolate. It's not full on chocolate. That's what gives it the signature red velvet taste. It's just that little bit of chocolate. And then the red food coloring obviously makes it red. Originally, it was beet juice that was used to make the cookies or the cupcakes red, but I just would rather use food coloring, and that's what most people use nowadays anyway. I'm just gonna mix that together. All kind of creamed up. Okay. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add my little bit of cocoa powder to give it the hint of chocolate flavor. And I'm going to add about half of my flour at a time, just to make it a little easier to work together. kind of working the lumps out. Okay, now I'm going to add the rest of my flour. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get an actual mixing spoon to kind of finish this off and work it together. Okay. Damn lumps out. So when you microwave flour, it does get a little bit more dense and thick. Not super thick, not that it's hard to work with, but it just gets a little bit more dense and thick. So there are some extra lumps that you got to work out that might take a little bit longer. So I know this is bad lighting. I've got the curtain down, but it's shitty, so it's not blocking all the lighting. But this is the color you have. It is not a dark chocolate color, it's a very light chocolate color. And that's part of the reason why red velvet cupcakes or cookies have a deep red color, because it's partially cocoa powder, partially red food coloring. So I'm going to add, you want to add quite a bit of red food coloring. It takes a bit, unless you're using red gel, then it won't take as much. To get that red in there and to kind of help it overpower the chocolate color. And this is a thinner cookie dough. If you want it to be a thicker cookie dough consistency, like a chocolate chip cookie dough, I just wanted to do a thinner one because, I don't know, sometimes I like to eat thinner dough batter. But if you want it to be a thicker one, instead of using a 1.5 cups, you can use a 1 3/4 cups, or maybe, I would suggest about a 1 3/4 cups, and that'll give you more of a thicker dough like a chocolate chip cookie dough. But also, one thing to remember is this is going to harden up once you put it in the fridge. So I kind of like to leave it a little more soft, because then I know once I store it, it's going to be kind of thick, and I'd have to let it come back to room temperature before I can kind of, I don't know, enjoy it. I just like a little bit of softer dough. I'm going to add a little bit more red because it's getting there, but I want it just a little bit more red. I want it to look kind of cool next to those white chips. You know what, matter of fact, I've got some extra cooked flour. I'll go ahead and add that in. And just for shits and giggles, you can see what it looks like when it's a 1 3/4 cups. I'll just make it look like a proper dough. That's about a 1/4 cup. got some left over because in the next one I'm going to make homemade edible mint chocolate chip cookie dough. So I'll just nuke a little extra for that one. Okay, this is a consistency of 1 3/4 cups. That's probably what I would go with, again, because once you put it in the fridge, it's going to thicken up. But if you want to make it super, super dense, you can use 2 cups of flour if you want. All right, now I'm going to add anywhere from 3/4 to 1 cup of white chocolate chips. That looks good. And it's fucking edible. Shit. Alright. And that's what we got. Looks really pretty. I'm gonna go ahead and get a spoon and give it a try. Okay. I'm just gonna take a little bit. Little chocolate chip, little red. That's very good. That's a very good red velvet flavor. Again, the trick with the sour cream in place of the egg versus milk in place of the egg, in my opinion, makes this to where you can't really tell that it's missing an egg. It tastes pretty much exactly the same. I highly recommend that trick. That shit's really good. Very good, rich red velvet flavor. So if you're into red velvet and you want to make homemade red velvet edible cookie dough, I highly suggest this recipe. I would use about 1 3/4 cup of flour if you want to make it about an average thickness once it freezes or hardens up in the fridge. 2 cups if you want to make it a super dense dough like cookie dough, so, or chocolate chip cookie dough. So if you like red velvet and you give this a try, I'm pretty damn sure you're going to enjoy. So I'm going to go make some mint chocolate chip edible cookie dough.